Lorenzo Moretti came home early with white roses in one hand and a wedding date in his pocket. But before he could surprise the woman he was supposed to marry, a little girl ran out of the east hallway and crashed into his chest like he was the last safe place left in the world. Her small fingers clutched his black suit. Her face was wet with tears, and her voice broke against him. "Please save my mom. She is hurting my mama. Please don't let her take my mama away." Lorenzo's guards moved at once, trained by years of violence to stop anything that rushed toward their boss. But Lorenzo raised one hand and froze them before they could touch the child. He looked down and recognized her instantly. Lena Bellini, Sophia's daughter, the quiet little girl who sometimes sat near the servant hallway with crayons whenever school closed early and her mother had no one else to watch her. Lorenzo had seen her before, never more than a passing glance, never enough to know the shape of her fear. But now that fear was pressed against his chest, shaking in his arms. "Lena?" he asked, lowering himself to her level. His voice, usually sharp enough to cut stone, came out soft. "What happened? Where is your mother?" Lena looked back toward Valentina's private suite, her lips trembling. "The pretty lady. She said if Mama talks, I will disappear." Something inside Lorenzo went cold. Not angry yet. Cold. The kind of cold that came before decisions no one could reverse. He gently took the child's hands from his jacket and looked at Marco, his most trusted guard. "Keep her behind you." Lena panicked and grabbed him again. "No, please. Don't leave my mama there." Lorenzo looked into her frightened eyes. "Lena," Lorenzo said as if making a promise with her name, "I am going to bring your mother out. No one will take her away from you." She stared at him, searching his face with the desperate seriousness only children have when they are deciding whether an adult is safe. Then she nodded once and allowed Marco to guide her back. Lorenzo handed the white roses to no one. He simply let them fall on the marble floor. The wedding date envelope remained inside his coat like a joke written by fate. 10 minutes earlier, he had imagined Valentina's smile. He had imagined her surprise when he told her the wedding planner had chosen 3 dates, and tonight, he wanted her to pick one. He had imagined candles, soft music, and the elegant woman in silk laughing because he had finally done something romantic instead of practical. But the sound coming from the east hallway was not laughter. It was water dripping. It was a woman trying not to cry. Lorenzo walked without making a sound. His guards followed, but one movement of his fingers kept them back. Lena had not searched for him. That much was clear. She had run blindly from fear. Later, Lorenzo would learn that Sophia Bellini had left her daughter in the servant hallway with crayons and a small wooden table because school had closed early and there was no one else to watch her. Later, he would learn that Valentina's suite door had been left half open because dress steamers, tea trays, and staff were moving in and out before dinner. Later, he would understand that Lena had heard the tray break, heard her mother's choked breath, heard Valentina's threat, and run toward the only open light she could see. The front hall. She had not known Lorenzo was entering at that exact moment. She had only run from a monster and collided with a man the city called one. Lorenzo reached Valentina's suite and stopped outside the half-open door. He did not enter, not yet. Men like him did not survive by reacting to the first thing they saw. They survived by listening to what people said when they thought no one powerful could hear them. Inside, Sophia Bellini was breathing hard. Her voice came broken but controlled. "She is a child." She heard nothing. "Please leave her out of this." Then came Valentina's voice, low, beautiful, and cruel. "Then remember your place. You are a maid. You clean secrets. You don't carry them." "I did not ask for your secret," Sophia said. "I only heard your truth." A pause. Then Valentina stepped closer. Lorenzo heard her heels against the marble. "You heard a phone call you should have never heard. You heard my husband's name. You heard what happens after the wedding. Now you will forget it, or your daughter will pay for your memory." Lorenzo's face changed. There was no dramatic shout, no sudden movement, no visible explosion. The change was smaller than that and far more dangerous. His eyes emptied. His heart, which had been beating with concern for the crying child, became still. He pushed the door open and stepped into the room. "Then maybe you should have checked the door before threatening a mother in my house." Valentina froze. Sophia turned slowly from the floor, soaked from her shoulders to her waist, her dark hair plastered to her cheek, her uniform wet and clinging to her knees. Her eyes found Lorenzo first with terror, then disbelief, then the smallest flash of hope. Valentina stood above her with an empty glass jug in one hand. The glass caught the daylight coming through the window and made her look almost holy for half a second. Then Lorenzo looked at her face and saw the woman underneath the silk. "Lorenzo," Valentina whispered. "Thank God you're here." He said nothing. Her expression shifted instantly into wounded innocence, the version of herself she wore at charity dinners and public galas. "This is not what it looks like." Lorenzo looked at the water spreading across the marble, then at Sophia's shaking hands, then at the door where Lena had run out crying. "It looks," he said, "like a child ran to me begging for her mother's life." Valentina's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then her mind caught its balance. She was not stupid. A stupid woman could not have stood beside Lorenzo Moretti for months and made his enemies believe she might become untouchable. "Sophia became hysterical," Valentina said, her voice softening into pain. "She was caught where she should not have been. I found her with my jewelry drawer open. I confronted her and she started screaming. Her daughter panicked. You know how children are." Sophia lifted her head. "That is not true." "Quiet!" Valentina snapped. Lorenzo's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Speak to her like that again and you leave this house before sunset." Valentina stared at him. Not because of the threat, because for the first time since she had known him, Lorenzo Moretti had placed a maid's dignity above her pride. Sophia tried to stand. Her knees shook. Lorenzo moved as if to help her, but she flinched. Not from him exactly, but from the expectation that any raised hand in that room might become another punishment. That flinch settled in Lorenzo's chest like a stone. He stopped and looked toward Rosa, the older housekeeper standing frozen near the far doorway with one hand over her mouth. "Help her," Lorenzo said. Rosa rushed forward. "Sophia, dear God," she whispered, wrapping an arm around the younger woman. Sophia's first words were not about herself. "Lena? Safe," Lorenzo answered. "Marco has her." Sophia closed her eyes, and a breath left her as if she'd been holding it since the first threat. Valentina saw that and rolled her eyes. "Beautiful. Now the performance has witnesses." Lorenzo turned slowly. "You poured water over her. She needed to calm down. On her knees." She refused to listen. "To what?" Valentina looked trapped for one moment. Then her expression hardened. "To reason." Lorenzo almost smiled. It was not warm. It was the kind of smile men remembered in nightmares. "Reason sounds different through a door." "Through a door it sounded like you threatened a child." Valentina's face flushed. "I was angry. Anger is breaking a glass. Anger is raising your voice. Threatening a little girl is not anger. It is character." Sophia lowered her eyes. Valentina's pride cracked enough for rage to show. "You are choosing to believe her because she looks pathetic." "No," Lorenzo said. "I am choosing to believe what I heard with my own ears." The words landed heavily. Valentina took a step back. She had prepared for many possibilities. Sophia running to another servant, Sophia begging for money, Sophia trying to escape with her daughter, Sophia being dismissed as a liar. She had not prepared for Lorenzo standing outside the door, hearing enough of the truth himself. Lorenzo walked to the overturned silver tray on the floor. A porcelain teacup lay shattered near the leg of the sofa. Tea had soaked into the cream rug. A folded linen napkin sat near Sophia's shoe. This was not a stage theft. This was a maid bringing tea and walking into a secret too large for her hands to hold. "Tell me exactly what happened," Lorenzo said, looking at Sophia. Valentina stepped forward. "No, I will not stand here while my staff invents stories about me in my own room." Lorenzo looked around slowly. "Your room. My house." Valentina shut her mouth. Sophia swallowed. Her voice was quiet, but it did not shake as badly now. Miss Ricci asked for tea before dinner and wanted her dress steamed again. Rosa was in the kitchen, so I brought the tray. The door was not fully closed because the steamer was still outside. I was not trying to listen. She was on the phone, on speaker. I think her hands were full with the dress. I heard a man's voice, then I heard her say his name. "Whose name?" Lorenzo asked, though the answer had already turned his blood to ice. Sophia looked at Valentina, then back at him. Damien Voss. Marco's face changed at the doorway. Rosa made the sign of the cross. Damien Voss was not just a name in Lorenzo's world. He was a wound that had learned to walk like a man. Continue, Lorenzo said. Sophia took a breath. She told him not to call the house again. She said after the wedding she would have your trust. She said she would know which doors opened from inside, which guards rotated, and which night you would be alone. She said he should wait until she became your wife. Lorenzo's eyes shifted to Valentina. And the husband? Sophia hesitated as if the word itself might harm her. He called her his wife. She did not deny it. She said, "Not until after the wedding, Damien. Until then, no one can know I am still your wife." Valentina laughed, but the sound was too sharp. "That is not what I said." "Then what did you say?" Lorenzo asked. Valentina lifted her chin. "I said no one can know he once thought I would be his wife. Damien is obsessed with me. He has been trying to reach me. I was protecting you." Lorenzo looked at the wet floor. "By threatening Lena?" "I panicked because Sophia misunderstood a dangerous conversation." Sophia looked at her, stunned. "You told me my daughter would disappear." "Because you were hysterical. I needed you to stop shouting." "I wasn't shouting," Sophia said. "I was asking you not to hurt her." Valentina took a step toward Sophia, forgetting Lorenzo for 1 second. "Because you brought her into this house like a shield. A maid's child running through my halls, touching my things, listening at doors." Sophia's face changed. Fear remained, but now anger rose beside it. "My daughter was in the servant hallway because her school closed early, and I had no one else. She was coloring at the back table. She heard me drop the tray and came because she thought I was hurt. And then ran outside to make a scene. She ran because you said she would disappear." Valentina's lips pressed into a hard line. Children hear words they do not understand. Lorenzo's voice was quiet. "She understood enough." He turned toward Marco. "Bring Lena close enough for Sophia to see her." "Not inside until I say." Sophia's eyes filled with gratitude she tried to hide. "Thank you, sir." "Do not thank me for doing what should have been done before she had to run." Marco returned with Lena a moment later. The little girl stood outside the room, half behind the guard, her eyes searching until they found Sophia. "Mama!" Sophia moved toward her, but Valentina took a sudden step and Lena recoiled. Lorenzo saw the recoil. So did everyone else. Sophia's face broke. "Lena, baby, I'm here." Lorenzo nodded, and the child rushed to Sophia, wrapping both arms around her waist. Sophia sank to her knees, wet uniform and all, and held Lena so tightly it looked like she was holding her own heartbeat. "I'm sorry," Lena sobbed. "I tried to find help." Sophia kissed her hair again and again. "You did right. You did so right. She said she would take you. No one can take me from you." Lena looked at Lorenzo over her mother's shoulder. He promised. Sophia looked at Lorenzo too. Something passed between them. Not romance, not yet. Something cleaner. Trust born in a terrible moment. Lorenzo nodded once. "I promised." Valentina watched the exchange with open irritation. "This is exactly what I mean. Look at this display. Tears, trembling, gratitude. She knows how to make you feel powerful." Lorenzo looked at her with disgust he did not bother to hide. "If that is what you see when a child holds her mother, then I almost made a worse mistake than I knew." Valentina's face hardened. "You think she cares about you? She would have sold what she heard to the highest bidder if I had not caught her." Sophia lifted her head. "No, no?" Valentina sneered. "Then what were you going to do with my private conversation?" Sophia looked at Lorenzo. "I don't know." Her honesty surprised the room. "I was afraid. I knew no one would believe a maid over your fiancé. I thought maybe I should run. Then I thought if I ran, she would still marry you, and whatever I heard would happen. I did not know what to do." Lorenzo held her gaze. "Would you have told me?" Sophia's answer came slowly. "Yes, but I was trying to find the courage." Valentina gave a bitter laugh. "Courage. How noble." Sophia stood, keeping Lena behind her. "Do not speak to me about courage when you used my daughter to make me silent." The room shifted. Sophia was still wet, still frightened, still a maid in a house where everyone else had more power than she did. But in that moment, she stood taller than Valentina. Lorenzo saw it. Valentina saw him see it, and hatred flickered across her face. "You are nothing," Valentina whispered. "You clean floors." Sophia's voice stayed low. "And today I cleaned enough lies to see the dirt under yours." Rosa inhaled sharply. Marco looked at the floor to hide the smallest hint of approval. Lorenzo did not hide his. Valentina's eyes filled with humiliation. She turned back to him. "You are going to let her insult me? You poured water on her in front of her child. Because she crossed a line." "No," Lorenzo said. She heard one. For the first time, Valentina seemed to understand that charm would not repair this. She lowered her voice and stepped closer to him, trying a different weapon. Intimacy. "Lorenzo, please, think. You know me. You know the woman I have been to you. The dinners, the charity nights, the quiet mornings, the way I stood beside you when everyone else feared your name. Do not let one frightened servant tear apart what we built." Lorenzo looked at her hand as she reached for his sleeve. He did not allow her to touch him. "What did we build?" he asked. Valentina stopped. "A future. A future with how many husbands?" Her eyes flashed. "That is cruel." "No. Cruel is threatening a child." She flinched. He continued. "Cruel is letting me bring flowers to a trap." Her voice dropped. "You do not know Damien." "I know enough." "No. You know the war version. You know the monster men mention in back rooms. I know the man who owns people even after they run." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. There it was again. Not just guilt. Fear. Valentina noticed his attention and immediately regretted giving him truth. He stepped closer. "How long?" "Lorenzo, how long have you been his wife?" Sophia's breath caught. Valentina looked at the child, at the guards, at Rosa, at Sophia. Pride struggled against panic. Finally, she looked back at Lorenzo. "It is not what you think." "That was not my question." "I was 18. The words came out like they had been buried alive. "My father owed Damien money and protection. Damien wanted a Ricci name attached to his business. My father gave him me." The room went still. Even Sophia's expression changed. Valentina's face hardened quickly, ashamed that she had revealed pain. It was not a marriage. It was a transaction. Lorenzo's voice remained quiet. "But legal." She looked away. "Yes. No divorce. No answer." "That was answer enough," Lena whispered. "Mama, is she crying?" Sophia gently turned Lena's face toward her shoulder. "Don't look, baby." Valentina heard and snapped, "Do not pity me." Sophia looked at her. "I pity the girl you were, not the woman who threatened my daughter." Those words struck harder than any accusation. Valentina's eyes filled, but she refused to cry. "You think you are better than me because you have a child to hide behind." Sophia's lips trembled. "No, I think I am responsible for the child holding my hand. That is why I cannot use her fear to save myself." Lorenzo looked at Sophia then, really looked. He had noticed her before in the way a man notices order. The tea delivered on time, the flowers placed correctly, his study cleaned without disturbing a single paper. He knew she was quiet. He knew she kept her daughter close on days school ended early. He knew Valentina disliked her, but Valentina disliked many things that did not shine. He had never asked why. Sophia always left the best piece of bread from staff dinner wrapped in a napkin for Lena. He had never asked why Lena waited at the servant entrance with crayons and never touched anything expensive. He had never asked because powerful men often mistake quiet people for simple ones. Today, the quiet woman had shown more courage than the woman he had intended to marry. Valentina saw the change in his eyes and grew desperate. "Damien came back," she said quickly. 6 months ago. He found me. He said the marriage still bound me. He said if I married you, he would finally release me after one job." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "What job?" Valentina did not answer. He stepped closer. "What job?" "A route," she whispered. "A private route from your study to the chapel property. He wanted the security schedule for the week after the wedding. He said he did not need to kill you, only take you long enough to make your men kneel." Marco's face darkened. Rosa crossed herself. Sophia pulled Lena closer. Lorenzo did not move. His silence was worse than rage. "And you agreed," he said. "I survived," Valentina said. "You planned." I was trapped. So you chose to trap me. You don't understand what it is to be powerless. Lorenzo looked at Sophia's soaked dress. I am beginning to. Valentina recoiled as if he had slapped her. Do not compare me to her. I wasn't, Lorenzo said. She had less power than anyone in this room, and still chose not to betray someone to save herself. Sophia looked down, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. Valentina's mouth twisted. She had nothing to lose. Sophia's head lifted. I had her. She placed one hand on Lena's head. That is everything. The line settled in the room with painful simplicity. Lorenzo felt it in a place he did not often allow anything to reach. He had come home believing his future was inside a wedding envelope. But the future had run into his arms crying. Not his child, not his blood, not his responsibility by law. Yet the moment Lena said, "Please save my mom," his house had become accountable. Valentina's betrayal had endangered his life. Her threat had revealed her soul. Lorenzo turned to Marco. Call Enzo, quietly. I want confirmation on Damien Voss. Recent movement, shell accounts, Ricci transfers, marriage records, everything. No one outside this wing hears why. Marco nodded and stepped away. Valentina's eyes widened. You are investigating me? Lorenzo looked at her. I am correcting the mistake of trusting you. Lorenzo, please. Do not. His voice was low, but it stopped her cold. Do not use my name like you did not just offer it to my enemy. Sophia whispered, Sir, may I take Lena away from here? Lorenzo looked at her. There was something unbearable about the request. She was asking permission to remove her child from a room where no child should ever have been afraid. Yes, he said. Rosa will take you both to the blue guest room. Not the servant quarters. The guest room. Sophia looked confused. Sir, I can go downstairs. You can go where my guards can protect you. Valentina laughed through tears. Now she gets a guest room. Lorenzo did not look at her. She gets safety. Rosa moved toward Sophia and Lena. Lena hesitated, still watching Lorenzo. Will you come? She asked. The question was small, but it filled the room. Lorenzo crouched again. Soon. Promise? I promised once already. I do not break promises to children. Lena nodded solemnly. Then she let Rosa lead her and Sophia away. Sophia paused at the doorway. I am sorry, she said. Lorenzo frowned. For what? For hearing what I was not meant to hear. Lorenzo looked at her soaked uniform, at the red marks on her wrist where someone had grabbed too hard, at the dignity she still tried to keep folded around herself like a torn coat. No, he said. I am sorry it took a child running into my arms for me to hear what was happening in my own house. Sophia's eyes shone, but she said nothing. Then she left with Lena. When the door closed behind them, the room felt larger and emptier. Valentina stood near the window, the afternoon light cutting across her face. Without the audience, without the child, without Sophia's quiet strength, she looked exhausted. But Lorenzo no longer trusted exhaustion. A snake could be tired and still venomous. Start talking, he said. Valentina wiped one tear with the back of her hand. You always were cruel when you became quiet. And you always performed better when people were watching. She looked at him sharply. I did care for you. Do not insult me with half-truths. I did, she insisted. Not at first. At first, yes, I needed protection. I needed your name. I needed a way out from under Damien. But you were not what I expected. What did you expect? A monster! Lorenzo's eyes hardened. And I found a lonely man pretending not to be one. The words landed somewhere uncomfortable. Valentina saw it and stepped closer. That is why I stayed. That is why this became harder. Harder to betray me? Yes. The honesty was ugly, but it was honesty. Lorenzo stared at her. Do you want credit for struggling before selling me? Her face crumpled. You don't know what he threatened. Tell me. My father. My brother. Me. He said he would send pieces of my past to every paper in Italy. He said he would tell you I belonged to him before you ever touched my hand. He said men like you do not forgive another man's claim. Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. You thought I would punish you for being forced into marriage at 18? Valentina looked away. I thought you would see me as damaged. So instead you chose to become dangerous. I chose to survive. By threatening Sophia's daughter. Silence. Valentina closed her eyes. I should not have said that. But you did. I was scared she would ruin everything. She was trying to save everything. For you, Valentina snapped, eyes opening. Not for me. No one saves women like me. Men use us. Fathers trade us. Husbands own us. And then saints like Sophia judge us because they had the luxury of staying clean. Lorenzo's voice dropped. Do not mistake Sophia's poverty for luxury. Valentina's jaw tightened. Before she could answer, Marco returned to the doorway. His face told Lorenzo enough before he spoke. Boss, say it. Marco glanced at Valentina, then back at Lorenzo. Enzo found the record. Malta, 9 years ago. Valentina Ricci and Damien Voss, marriage registered. No divorce filed. Valentina's shoulders fell. Lorenzo did not blink. Marco continued. There is more. Lorenzo's eyes sharpened. What more? Damien Voss entered the city 2 nights ago under a false name. Valentina went still. No, she whispered. Marco looked at Lorenzo. And boss, he is not waiting for after the wedding. Lorenzo's voice became ice. Where is he? Marco hesitated. We traced one of his men near the chapel property. The same place listed for your private wedding blessing tomorrow. Lorenzo slowly turned to Valentina. She looked genuinely terrified now, but terror no longer separated victim from traitor. Sometimes it wore both faces. Tomorrow, Lorenzo said. Not after the wedding. Valentina's lips trembled. He changed the plan. Or you lied about it. No. She shook her head hard. No, I swear. He said after the wedding. He said I had time. Lorenzo stepped toward her. Time for what? She looked at him, and the last of her performance burned away. Time to decide whether to warn you. The confession hung between them. For the first time since he entered the room, Lorenzo's control nearly cracked. You had 6 months. I know. You had 6 months to tell. Me, a man, was using you to reach my house. I know. And the only reason I know today is because a maid dropped a tray. Valentina said nothing. Lorenzo looked toward the hall where Sophia and Lena had gone. The woman who had nothing had risked everything with one frightened truth. The woman who had everything had spent 6 months deciding whether his life was worth honesty. Lorenzo turned back to Marco. Lock the chapel property down. Quietly. Double the men around the guest wing. Sophia and Lena are under my protection. No one speaks to them without me. Marco nodded. And Valentina? Lorenzo looked at the woman he had come home to marry. The white roses were still lying somewhere in the hallway, crushed under the path his life had taken. She stays where I can see her, he said. Valentina's eyes filled again. Lorenzo. He stepped close, his voice so low only she could hear. If Damien Voss is already moving toward my chapel, then this wedding surprise just became a funeral trap. And before the night is over, one of you is going to tell me who was supposed to die there. For 3 seconds, Valentina did not breathe. The name Damien Voss had already poisoned the room, but the word chapel made the poison spread into every corner of Lorenzo's house. The chapel property was not only where Lorenzo had planned to hold a private wedding blessing. It was the oldest Moretti land in the city, a stone building his grandfather had bought after his first victory, a place where Lorenzo's family made promises, buried grief, and trusted God more than men. Damien choosing that place was not business. It was insult. It was a knife placed on the family table. Lorenzo looked at Valentina. Who was supposed to die there? He asked again. Valentina's lips moved, but no sound came. Answer me. She swallowed hard. You were not supposed to die. Marco's jaw tightened at the door. Lorenzo did not move. Then who? No one, Valentina whispered. It was supposed to be a handover. Lorenzo laughed once, quietly, without humor. A handover. Damien wanted you alive. He wanted your signature, your accounts, your roots. He said if I gave him 1 clean hour alone with you after the blessing, he would disappear. Lorenzo stepped closer. And you believed him? Valentina's eyes filled with shame and fear. I wanted to. That is not the same thing. I know. Her voice cracked. I know that now. Lorenzo looked at Marco. The chapel. Marco nodded and lifted his phone again, already moving toward the hall. Lorenzo's voice followed him. No sirens, no noise. Quiet net. I want every road watched, every delivery stopped, every man identified before he knows we see him. Done, Marco said. Valentina wrapped her arms around herself. If Damien knows you found out, he'll run. Lorenzo looked back at her. Then we will not let him know. Her eyes widened. What does that mean? It means the blessing still appears to happen. Valentina stared at him as if he had lost his mind. You cannot be serious. I am always serious when someone brings war to my home. Lorenzo, if you walk into that chapel, I am not walking into his trap. His voice was calm. He is walking into mine. Valentina shook her head. You don't understand him. He will know. He always knows when fear changes. Then stop being afraid. She gave a broken laugh. That is easy for you to say. No, Lorenzo said. It is easy for Sophia's daughter to say when she runs for help. It is easy for a child to choose courage because no one has taught her how expensive it is yet. You and I are adults. We do not get to hide behind fear after using it on someone weaker. Valentina flinched. The truth had become a physical thing in the room. Lorenzo turned away from her and walked toward the hallway. Keep her here, he told Marco's second guard. If she moves, breathes wrong, or tries to send one message, you tell me before you tell God. The guard nodded. Valentina whispered his name, but Lorenzo did not turn around. Lorenzo. He stopped at the doorway. I did care for you. He did not look back. Then that is the saddest part. In the blue guest room, Sophia sat on the edge of the bed wrapped in a dry blanket, Lena pressed against her side like a small shadow. Rosa had brought warm towels and tea, but Sophia had barely touched either. Her uniform was gone, replaced by one of Rosa's plain dresses. Still, she looked uncomfortable in the room, as if kindness were a chair she had not been invited to sit in. When Lorenzo entered, she immediately tried to stand. Please don't, he said. Sophia froze halfway up. Sir, I should not be in here. You should not have been on that floor either. She lowered her eyes. Lena stared at him from under Sophia's arm. Is the pretty lady gone? Lorenzo softened his voice. She is away from you. Lena thought about that answer. But is Mama safe? Lorenzo looked at Sophia before answering. Yes, both of you are under my protection. Sophia's face tightened with worry instead of relief. Sir, I don't want trouble. Trouble already came here wearing a dress worth more than your yearly salary. Sophia looked down, embarrassed. I only wanted to do my work. No, Lorenzo said. Today you did more than your work. Lena lifted her head. Mama dropped the tray. Sophia's cheeks flushed. Lena. Lorenzo crouched so the child would not have to look up at him. That tray may have saved my life. Lena's eyes widened. Really? Really. Then Mama won't lose her job. Sophia closed her eyes, and Lorenzo heard everything inside that question. Rent, food, school fees, medicine. A life balanced so tightly that one rich woman's anger could break it. No, Lorenzo said. Your mother will not lose her job for telling the truth. Lena leaned against Sophia in relief. Sophia whispered, Thank you. Lorenzo stood. Do not thank me yet. I need to ask you something. Sophia's hands tightened around Lena. About the call? Yes. Did Valentina say anything else? Any place, any object, any timing? Small details matter. Sophia closed her eyes, trying to return to the moment that had nearly destroyed her. She said, after the blessing, not before. She said you would go to the old chapel office to sign family papers. Lorenzo's expression changed slightly. The old chapel office? Yes. She said that room had a back door only family used. Marco, standing at the entrance, looked at Lorenzo. The back door had not been used in years. Only old Moretti staff knew it existed. Lorenzo's voice remained steady. Anything else? Sophia frowned, fighting memory. She said the flowers would arrive early. White lilies, not roses. She told Damien not to send men who looked like soldiers. She said wedding workers are invisible if they carry something beautiful. Lorenzo's eyes went hard. Marco was already typing into his phone. Stop every floral van headed to the chapel property, Lorenzo said. Quietly, Sophia's face went pale. I'm sorry. I should have remembered sooner. You remembered in time. There was one more thing. Lorenzo became still. Sophia looked toward Lena, then gently asked Rosa to take her to the washroom for a minute. Lena did not want to leave, but Sophia kissed her forehead and promised she would stay right there. When the child was gone, Sophia reached into the pocket of Rosa's borrowed dress and removed a small bronze key tied with white thread. Lorenzo's expression darkened. Where did you get that? Sophia placed it carefully on the table. When Miss Ricci grabbed my wrist, this fell from her sleeve. I did not know what it was. I picked it up because Lena was on the floor near the broken glass, and I did not want her to cut herself. I forgot it was in my hand until Rosa changed my dress. Marco stepped forward. Boss. Lorenzo took the key without touching Sophia's fingers. He knew that key. He had not seen it since his mother died. It belonged to the sacristy door behind the old chapel office, the door used by Moretti brides to enter quietly before family blessings. Lorenzo had given Valentina access to the chapel for planning, but that key should have remained locked in the chapel safe. Valentina had not only planned betrayal, she had stolen from the bones of his family. Sophia, Lorenzo said, his voice lower now. This detail may matter more than anything you heard. Sophia looked ashamed instead of proud. I should have told you immediately. You were soaked, threatened, and protecting your daughter. Still, her voice steadied. If this can stop him, then use it. I don't want to run away while the people who did this walk into that chapel. Lorenzo looked at her then. Really looked. She was no longer just the woman he had found on his floor. She was frightened, yes, but she was choosing to stand where fear told her to hide. You do not have to be brave for my war, he said. Sophia met his eyes. This stopped being only your war when my daughter learned to fear a beautiful room. Silence followed. Lorenzo closed his hand around the key. Then I will make sure she never has to learn that lesson twice. By sunset, the truth arrived piece by piece. Damien Voss had entered the city 2 nights before. 3 rented vans were moving under a catering license toward the chapel road. A florist had been paid double in cash to stay home. One of Valentina's deleted messages, recovered from a backup by Enzo's men, mentioned the hour after the blessing and family papers. Another mentioned Lily's. Nothing stated murder. Nothing had to. In Lorenzo's world, a private hour with an enemy was never private, and never only an hour. By nightfall, the chapel was surrounded so quietly that even the birds seemed not to notice. The vans were stopped at different streets before they reached the property. Men carrying white lilies stepped out and found themselves facing Moretti guns instead of wedding staff. No bullets were fired. Lorenzo had given one order, clean. But Damien Voss was not a fool. He had entered earlier than expected. Not through the front road and not through the delivery path. He had entered through the sacristy door behind the old chapel office, using the route Sophia had uncovered before he could disappear into it. When Lorenzo walked into the old chapel office near midnight, Damien Voss was sitting behind Lorenzo's grandfather's desk, as if the room already belonged to him. He was thinner than the old photographs, older around the eyes, but arrogance had kept him young in the ugliest way. On the desk lay a bottle of wine, 2 glasses, and a folder of transfer papers. The insult was almost elegant. Lorenzo Moretti, Damien said. I expected you tomorrow. Lorenzo entered with Marco at his side. I came early. Damien's smile sharpened. You always did ruin ceremonies. Lorenzo glanced around the chapel office. The saints on the walls looked down in painted silence. His mother had once stood in that room before her wedding blessing, holding the same bronze key Sophia had placed in his palm. The thought did not make him sad. It made him surgical. You thought I would sign while drugged, beaten, or grieving? Lorenzo asked. Damien shrugged. People sign for many reasons. Pain is only one of them. And Valentina. Damien leaned back. Still beautiful. Still nervous. Still useful. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Your wife. By law. Not by loyalty. Damien laughed. Loyalty? You speak like a priest standing in a butcher shop. He tapped the folder. She was born into a family that sells daughters and calls it strategy. I did not create her. I simply kept the receipt. Lorenzo took 1 step forward, but Marco shifted beside him, a silent reminder. Damien noticed and smiled wider. Careful. The maid may have made you sentimental, Lorenzo's eyes did not change. Do not mention her. Ah. Damien's smile turned knowing. So that is what happened. Valentina threatened the wrong servant. She threatened a child. Valentina always was dramatic when scared. Lorenzo studied him. You were never going to free her. Damien's expression flickered with amusement. Free her? Lorenzo, I was going to bury her after the papers. A woman who betrays one husband will betray another. You of all men should know that. There it was, the final cruelty Valentina had not allowed herself to see. She had sold Lorenzo for a freedom that had never existed. Damien had used her fear as easily as Valentina had used Sophia's. Lorenzo looked at the papers on the desk. You came for my roots. Your roots, your port access, your southern accounts, and the pleasure of watching your men realize their king could be taken in a chapel. You chose the wrong chapel. Damien smiled. And you chose the wrong bride. Lorenzo's face became still. Yes, he said. But I listened to the right woman. Damien's smile faded for the first time. His fingers moved under the desk, quick and practiced, but Marco was quicker. The room erupted in movement, but not chaos. Lorenzo's men had waited in the walls, in the hall, at the family door, and beside the sacristy passage Sophia's key had revealed. Damien's second man dropped from behind the cabinet with a blade in his sleeve, but Enzo caught him before he took 2 steps. The wine bottle shattered. The papers scattered across the floor. Damien Voss was forced to his knees on the same stone where Moretti men had once prayed for sons who never came home. Lorenzo stood over him, but there was no satisfaction in his face. Only finality. You wanted 1 clean hour, Lorenzo said. You have 1 minute. Who inside the Ricci family helped you? Damien looked up, breathing hard, still trying to smile. Wouldn't you like to know? Lorenzo glanced at Marco. Marco placed a phone on the desk and played a voice message taken from one of Damien's men, Valentina's father, begging Damien to wait until after the wedding. Damien's smile died completely. Lorenzo leaned down. I already know. I wanted to see if fear made you honest. Damien said nothing. It doesn't, Lorenzo said. It only makes cowards louder. By midnight, Damien Voss was in Moretti custody, alive because Lorenzo wanted every name, every account, every hidden ally. Valentina's father was taken from his home before he could board a private plane. The Ricci family's business accounts were frozen through channels Lorenzo had spent years building. The wedding announcement was canceled before dawn. No explanation was given to the public, not yet. Lorenzo preferred truth to arrive like a knife slid slowly from a sleeve. Valentina learned Damien had been captured in Lorenzo's study. She sat across from his desk, pale, hollow-eyed, stripped of jewelry except the small diamond earrings she had worn when Lorenzo first met her. He stood by the window as the city moved under morning light. He was going to kill you, Lorenzo said. Valentina stared at him. No, after using you. After using me. After the papers. She shook her head, but there was no strength in it. He promised. Lorenzo turned. And you believed a man who once accepted you as payment? Tears gathered in her eyes. I needed to believe something. So did I. That silenced her. He walked to the desk and placed the wedding date envelope between them. It was still sealed. I came home with this. Valentina looked at it and broke. Not loudly, not beautifully. She simply folded forward as if the shape of her life had finally become too heavy. I did not want to become this, she whispered. Lorenzo did not soften. But you did. I was afraid. Sophia was afraid. Valentina closed her eyes. Do not say her name. She was soaked on my floor, and still protected the truth until you threatened her daughter. Because she is better than me. Is that what you want me to say? Lorenzo's voice was quiet. No. I want you to understand that being hurt did not give you the right to hurt her. Valentina looked up, and for once there was no performance left. What will happen to me? Your marriage to Damien will be made public through legal channels. Your father's role will be exposed. You will leave this house today under guard. After that, the courts can decide what name to give your crimes. And you? She whispered. What name do you give them? Lorenzo looked at the closed wedding envelope. Betrayal. She nodded as if she had expected nothing else. When the guards came, Valentina stood without argument. At the door, she paused. "Lorenzo." He looked at her. "Did you ever love me?" For a moment, he saw all the versions of her at once. The frightened girl traded by her father, the elegant woman who had sat beside him at dinner, the liar who had led Damien toward his chapel, the cruel fiancé pouring water over a maid while a child cried. "I loved who I thought you were," he said. "That woman never existed." Valentina's face crumpled, but he turned away before the tears could ask anything from him. She left the house with nothing but the truth following her. Later that morning, Lorenzo went to the blue guest room. Sophia was awake, sitting near the window while Lena slept curled on the bed. The child had one hand tucked under her cheek, peaceful now, the terror softened by exhaustion. Sophia stood immediately. "Sir, please," Lorenzo said. "Not today." She looked confused. "Not what?" "Do not stand like you owe me." Sophia slowly sat back down. "Is it over?" "Damien is caught. Valentina is leaving. Her father will not touch you. No one will." Sophia pressed her lips together, and for a moment she looked away, because relief can feel too much like weakness when someone has been strong for too long. "Thank you." Lorenzo sat in the chair across from her, leaving enough space to make clear she was safe. "I owe you more than thanks." "No, sir. I only heard a call." "You remembered what mattered. You kept the key. You stayed when running would have been easier." Sophia looked at Lena. "I almost ran. But you didn't. Because I thought of her." Her voice softened. "I thought, one day she will ask me what I did when I heard a wrong thing happening. I could not teach her to hide from truth." Lorenzo looked at the sleeping child. She ran straight into my arms. Sophia's face changed with embarrassment. "I am sorry. She should not have touched you. She should not have needed to." Sophia looked at him, surprised by the pain in his voice. He continued, "This house failed her before she reached the door. It failed you before she dropped that tray. You cannot know everything that happens in a house this big. Then the house is too big, or I have been looking in the wrong rooms." Sophia did not know what to say. Lorenzo took a folded paper from his coat and placed it on the small table. Sophia stiffened. "What is that?" "Options, sir. A protected apartment if you want distance. Paid leave if you need time. A place in this house if you want to stay. No debt, no condition, no order." Sophia stared at the paper for a long moment. Then she slowly pushed it back toward him. Lorenzo's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in surprise. "Sophia!" She looked at Lena, then back at him. "Your house may be safe, sir, but it is not normal." Lorenzo did not answer. Sophia's voice trembled, but she kept it steady. "Lena learned too many words yesterday. Guards, threat, disappear, Damien Voss. She is 6 years old. She should be drawing houses with gardens, not learning which hallway leads to help." Lorenzo's face tightened. "I can put guards around any apartment you choose." "That is not what I mean." Sophia folded her hands together to stop them from shaking. "I am grateful. I will always be grateful. But I cannot let my daughter grow up thinking safety means men with guns outside every door." "Then tell me what safety means," Lorenzo said quietly. Sophia looked at him, and for the first time she did not lower her eyes. "A door I can close without asking permission. A table where my daughter can laugh without checking who is listening. A life where protection does not feel like ownership." The word struck him harder than accusation. Lorenzo Moretti had heard men beg, lie, curse, and offer their souls to him, but he had rarely heard someone refuse him with dignity. He looked at the paper between them. Then he picked it up and folded it once. "If you leave," he said, "you will still be protected." Sophia's eyes filled. "Sir, not as ownership," he said. "As a promise." Sophia swallowed. "And if I do not want guards at my door?" "Then you will have distance without a cage. Marco will arrange safety you do not have to see." She gave a small, sad smile. "You make it sound easy." "It is not." Lorenzo looked at Lena sleeping beside her. "But I gave her my word before I understood what it would cost me." Sophia looked at him then, really looked. Maybe that was the first moment something changed between them. Not love, not yet, but a dangerous kind of respect, the kind that begins when a powerful man could take and chooses not to. 2 days later, Sophia and Lena left the Moretti mansion through the same front hall where the white roses had fallen. Rosa cried quietly while holding Lena's little suitcase. Marco stood near the door, expression unreadable. Lorenzo stood at the foot of the staircase, hands at his sides, not touching Sophia, not stopping her, not turning her goodbye into another command. Lena looked back at him. Will Mama still be safe? Lorenzo crouched at the distance Sophia had allowed. Yes, even if we don't live here? Especially then. Lena thought about that, then nodded with solemn trust. Sophia's throat tightened. She wanted to thank him, but gratitude felt too small and too dangerous. So she only said, "Goodbye, sir." Lorenzo's jaw moved once. "Goodbye, Sophia." He watched them leave, and for the first time in years, the mansion felt too large because someone had walked out of it with the right to go. For 3 weeks, Sophia tried to build a quiet life. The apartment Lorenzo arranged through a neutral charity was small, clean, and far enough from the Moretti house that Lena could walk to school without passing armed gates. Sophia found temporary work at a bakery near the corner. She rose before dawn, packed Lena's lunch, and told herself that quiet was enough. For a while it almost was. Lena began drawing again. Houses, flowers, a garden with a fountain she claimed she did not miss. Sometimes a tall man appeared near the door of the house, but Sophia never asked who he was. She was afraid of the answer, and more afraid that she already knew it. Then the rumors began. They arrived first as whispers outside the bakery, then as a woman pulling her purse closer when Sophia passed. Then as a mother at Lena's school gate lowering her voice too late. "That's the maid," someone said. "The one who tried to frame Valentina Ricci. I heard she was caught stealing jewelry. I heard she used her child." Sophia kept walking. She had survived worse than whispers. But that afternoon, Lena came home quiet. Too quiet. She placed her crayons on the table and did not open them. Sophia knelt in front of her. "Baby, what happened?" Lena looked at her with eyes too old for her face. "Mama, what does thief mean?" Sophia's heart broke so suddenly she almost reached for the wall. "Who said that word to you?" Lena looked down. "A girl's mama said I should not bring my crayons near her bag because my mama likes pretty things that are not hers." The room blurred. Sophia pulled Lena into her arms, but her daughter did not cry. That made it worse. "Mama," Lena whispered, "you didn't steal anything, right?" Sophia closed her eyes. The truth had saved a mafia boss, exposed a wife, stopped a trap, and brought down a monster. But here, in a small apartment with a child holding crayons, the truth still had to defend itself against gossip. "No, baby," Sophia whispered. "I did not steal anything." Lena nodded, but her fingers clutched Sophia's sleeve the way they had clutched Lorenzo's suit that day. That night, Lorenzo came to know before Sophia called. She did not call at all. Marco brought the report into his study and placed it on the desk without a word. Lorenzo read every line. Ricci allies had begun leaking stories to sympathetic society pages and school circles. Sophia Bellini, unstable maid, caught near jewelry drawer, used child to manipulate Moretti household, Valentina Ricci framed by servant lies. Lorenzo's hand closed around the paper until it bent. "By sunrise," he said, his voice low enough to make the lamps feel cold. "I want every Ricci name buried." Marco nodded once and reached for his phone. "No," the voice came from the doorway. Lorenzo turned. Sophia stood there in her bakery uniform, flour still at one cuff, exhaustion under her eyes, dignity wrapped around her like armor she had made from bruises. Marco lowered the phone slowly. Lorenzo took one step toward her. "How did you get in?" "Rosa. You should have called. So you could fix it before I arrived?" He stopped. Sophia looked at the paper in his hand. "If you silence them for me, they will say I had no truth, only Moretti fear." Lorenzo's eyes darkened. "They called you a thief. I know. They brought Lena into it." Her mouth trembled, but she held herself still. "I know." "Then let me end it." "No." The word was soft, but it stood between them like a wall. "I will not hide behind your power. This is not pride, Sophia. This is protection." "No," she said. This is the difference between being protected and being owned. Lorenzo went still. Sophia took a breath. My daughter asked me what thief means today. I will not answer that question by letting powerful men fight over my name while I stand quietly behind them. I stood quietly once. It nearly cost you your life. The room fell silent. Marco looked away. Lorenzo stared at her for a long moment, and something in his face changed. Not anger, not surrender. Understanding. What do you want? He asked. Sophia looked surprised, as if she had prepared for resistance but not respect. A room where they have to ask me questions to my face. Lorenzo's mouth tightened. You want a public inquiry? I want them to say their lies while I am standing. There. They will try to humiliate you. They already are. They will bring lawyers. Then let them bring lawyers. Lorenzo studied her. And if I speak? You won't. The answer came too quickly, and Sophia's cheeks flushed, but she did not take it back. Not unless I ask you to. Marco's eyes shifted to Lorenzo, waiting for the explosion that never came. Lorenzo slowly placed the crumpled report on the desk. All right, Sophia blinked. All right. You want your name cleared by truth, not fear. Then we do it your way. Her breath caught. Lorenzo stepped closer but stopped before he entered her space. But Sophia, understand me. If they touch Lena again, if one person speaks to your child before speaking to you, I will not wait for permission. Sophia held his gaze. Fair. The smallest shadow of a smile crossed his face. You negotiate like you were born in this house. No, she said. I negotiate like a mother who has nothing left to lose. The inquiry was held 2 days later in the Moretti Mansion's front hall. The same hall where Lena had run crying into Lorenzo's chest. The same marble floor where the white roses had fallen. Lorenzo chose that place on purpose. If lies were going to be spoken, they would be spoken where the truth had first arrived. The room was filled with people who had once looked through Sophia without seeing her. Ricci lawyers, charity board members, senior staff, 2 legal witnesses, Rosa, Marco, Enzo, and several society figures who had been very comfortable whispering when Sophia was not present. Valentina's father arrived in a dark suit with grief painted on his face like expensive perfume. He looked at Sophia once, then dismissed her as if she were furniture. Lorenzo stood near the staircase, silent, hands folded in front of him. His silence frightened the room more than shouting would have. Sophia stood alone in the center, wearing her plain navy dress. No jewels, no borrowed elegance. Lena waited with Rosa near the back, clutching her crayons in both hands. Sophia had not wanted her there, but Lena had begged. If they say bad things about you, she had whispered, I want to hear you say the true things. That was why Sophia stood there now with her heart beating against her ribs and her daughter watching. The Ricci lawyer began smoothly. Miss Bellini, is it true you were found inside Miss Ricci's private suite near her jewelry drawer? Lorenzo's fingers twitched once, but he did not speak. Sophia felt his restraint from across the room. It gave her strength because it was not control. It was trust. Yes, Sophia said. A murmur moved through the hall. The lawyer smiled faintly. So you admit you were near her valuables? I was near her drawer, because I was on my knees after she poured water over me. The murmur died. Sophia continued, her voice shaking only at the edges. I did not steal her jewels. I heard her truth, and that was the only thing in that room valuable enough to make her afraid. Rosa began to cry silently. The lawyer's smile thinned. Miss Bellini, are you aware that accusing a woman of Miss Ricci's status requires evidence? Sophia looked at him. Being poor does not make my memory less legal. Someone in the room drew a sharp breath. Lorenzo's eyes did not leave her face. The lawyer stiffened. Did you or did you not use your child to create sympathy from Mr. Moretti? Sophia turned, slowly enough that the whole room followed her gaze to Lena. Lena stood very still. Too still. Sophia's voice softened, but it carried. My daughter did not run for sympathy. She ran because a beautiful woman in a beautiful room taught her that power could make mothers disappear. Lena's eyes filled. Sophia looked back at the lawyer. If you want to call a 6-year-old child a strategy, do it while looking at her. The lawyer looked down first. That was the first victory. Then Valentina entered. No one had expected her. Her father turned sharply. Valentina. She walked slowly, paler than Sophia had ever seen her, dressed in black, her beauty still present, but no longer useful. 2 guards remained near the doorway behind her. The room shifted. The Ricci lawyer moved toward her, desperate for control. "Miss Ricci, please confirm for their record that Miss Bellini fabricated the accusation after being caught in your room." Valentina looked at Sophia. For one long second, hatred flickered there. Then exhaustion. Then something more painful than either. Recognition. Her eyes moved to Lena, who was standing with crayons clutched to her chest like a shield. Valentina's mouth trembled. Her father stepped closer. "Tell them the maid lied." Valentina turned to him. For a moment, the room disappeared, and she was 18 again, standing before a father who had decided her life was a debt payment. Her voice came quietly. "No." The word cracked the hall open. Her father stared at her. "What?" Valentina looked at Sophia again. The maid did not lie. Silence fell so hard it seemed to stop the air. The lawyer tried to speak, but Valentina raised one hand. She heard what I said. She heard Damien's name. She heard enough to know the wedding was a trap. Her father's face went white. "Valentina, stop." She turned on him fully. "You sold me once." The words struck the room like a slap. "I will not let you bury another woman's name to save yours." Sophia's breath caught. Lorenzo's face did not change, but his eyes sharpened. Valentina looked at him once, then away. "I am not saying this because I am clean. I am not. I threatened Sophia. I threatened her child. I did what frightened people do when they become cruel instead of brave." Her voice broke, but she forced it steady. "But she did not steal from me. She did not frame me. She told the truth." Her father moved as if to grab her arm, but Marco was suddenly there, one step between them. Valentina's father stopped. Lorenzo finally spoke, and his voice carried the weight of a door closing forever. "The record is complete." The Ricci lawyer lowered his papers. No one whispered now. Sophia stood in the center of the hall, still trembling, still poor, still the same woman who had been on the floor days earlier. But the room no longer looked through her. They saw her. That was what almost broke her. Not the insults, not the accusation. Being seen. Lena broke free from Rosa and ran to her mother. Sophia caught her, kneeling again on the same marble where the story had begun. But this time no one stood over her. Lena whispered into her neck, "You said the true things, Mama." Sophia held her daughter and closed her eyes. "Yes, baby." Across the room, Lorenzo watched them. He did not move toward them. He wanted to. Every instinct in him wanted to wrap his power around them so tightly nothing could touch them again. But Sophia had asked for her voice, not his shadow. So he stayed where he was and let her victory belong to her. That evening, Sophia left the mansion again. Rosa begged her to stay for dinner. Marco offered a car. Lorenzo said nothing until they reached the front doors. The setting sun poured across the marble floor, turning the place where the roses had fallen into gold. Sophia looked at him. "Thank you for not speaking." He gave the faintest smile. "It was one of the hardest things I have done." She almost smiled back. Almost. "You could have ended it faster." "Yes." "Why didn't you?" Lorenzo looked at Lena, who was half asleep against Rosa's side, then back at Sophia. "Because you asked me not to own your truth." Sophia's eyes changed. That sentence did more than any protection order could have done. "Good night, Lorenzo," she said, and it was the first time she used his name without being told. He felt it like a hand placed carefully over an old wound. "Good night, Sophia." Later that night, when the city had gone quiet, and Lena was asleep in the small apartment with one arm around her crayons, Sophia heard a knock at the door. She froze. Then she looked through the peephole and found Lorenzo standing alone in the hallway. No guards, no black cars visible from the window, no command surrounding him. Just Lorenzo, holding a folded piece of paper in one hand. Sophia opened the door only halfway. "Is something wrong?" "No." He looked almost uncertain, which would have been impossible to believe if she had not seen it with her own eyes. "May I give you this?" She looked at the paper. "What is it?" Lena left it in the hall. Sophia took it slowly. It was one of Lena's drawings. A crooked house, a woman with dark hair, a little girl with a ribbon, and a tall man standing outside the door, not inside the house, not at the center, not owning it, waiting. Sophia stared at the drawing. She drew you outside. Lorenzo nodded. Yes. Why does that matter? He looked at the little apartment behind her, at the small table, the 2 cups drying beside the sink, the crayons lined in a careful row. Because I have spent my life owning houses, Sophia. Your daughter was the first person who drew me as someone waiting to be invited in. Sophia's eyes filled before she could stop them. Lorenzo did not step closer. I do not know how to be that man yet, he said, but I would like to learn. Sophia looked at him through the narrow opening of the door. And if I never invite you in, then I stay grateful outside. It should have sounded like a line. It did not. It sounded like a man telling the truth because he had finally found someone who would not reward him for pretending. Sophia opened the door a little wider. Not fully, not yet, but wider. Would you like tea? Lorenzo looked at the small apartment, then at her. Only if you want to make it. Sophia almost laughed. I asked, didn't I? Something softened in his face. Then yes. He stepped inside like a man entering a church. Careful not because the room was expensive, but because it was not his. That was the night Sophia began to love him. Not because he saved her. Not because he had power. Not because he could destroy anyone who touched her name. She began to love him because he had stood in a hallway outside her door and admitted he did not belong until she said he did. After that, Lorenzo did not visit often. He did not want Lena's neighbors counting his car. He did not want Sophia's quiet life swallowed by his name. Sometimes he came on Sunday afternoons with groceries he pretended were from Rosa. Sophia always pretended to believe him badly enough that Lena laughed. Sometimes he sat at the small table while Lena showed him drawings and asked why all his suits looked like sad penguins. Sometimes Sophia caught him washing his own cup in the sink, awkwardly, as if he were learning an ancient skill. You have people for that, she said once. Lorenzo looked at the soap on his hands. I have had people for too many things. Sophia said nothing, but she smiled while turning away. Lena saw it. Of course she saw it. Children see what adults think they hide. She saw her mother's shoulders relax when Lorenzo remembered to knock twice and wait. She saw Lorenzo leave before dinner if Sophia looked tired. She saw him bring no gifts for Sophia except small practical things. A better lock for the door, a book Lena had mentioned, a packet of rose seeds because Lena wanted to grow not scary flowers. Most of all, Lena saw that her mother smiled with him in a way that did not ask permission from fear. 1 month after the public inquiry, Lorenzo asked Sophia to come to the mansion. She almost refused. For what? She asked. No meeting, he said. No lawyers. No Ricci name. Just the front hall. Sophia's breath caught. The front hall was not just a room. It was the place where Lena had run. The place where white roses had fallen. The place where fear had collided with fate. Lena too? Sophia asked. Lorenzo's voice softened. Only if she wants, Lena wanted. She wore her white ribbon and insisted on carrying her best crayon drawing because big houses need pictures or they get lonely. When they arrived, the mansion doors stood open. Not like a command, like an invitation. The front hall was filled with daylight. White roses lined both sides of the marble floor, not scattered, not fallen, not crushed under anyone's shoes. Rosa stood near the staircase with tears already in her eyes. Marco stood beside her, expression stern, though Lena immediately whispered, "He is trying not to smile." Sophia looked at Lorenzo. He stood in the center of the hall, exactly where Lena had crashed into him weeks before. No crowd, no audience, no performance. Just the people who had witnessed the beginning. Sophia's voice trembled. What is this? Lorenzo walked toward her slowly, stopping far enough away that she could still choose distance. The first time I stood here with roses, I was going to choose a lie, he said. Then your daughter ran into me and asked me to become better than the man this city feared. Sophia's eyes filled. Lorenzo looked at Lena. She asked me to save her mother. I thought that meant pulling you out of a room. His gaze returned to Sophia. I did not understand that saving someone is sometimes letting them walk away from you. Sometimes it is staying quiet while they defend their own name. Sometimes it is standing outside a door until they decide whether you are safe enough to enter. Sophia covered her mouth with one hand. Lorenzo reached into his coat and removed a small velvet box. He did not open it yet. Sofia Bellini, I will not ask you to live under my protection. I am asking you to build a life with me where protection is not control, and love is not debt. Her tears spilled over. Lorenzo lowered himself to one knee on the marble floor, the same floor where Sofia had once knelt soaked and humiliated, the same floor where Lena had clung to him in terror. This time, no one was above anyone in cruelty. This time, he knelt by choice. I cannot promise you a life without danger, he said. I will not insult you with a pretty lie, but I promise that your voice will never have to break before I hear it. I promise that Lena will never be used as a price for your silence. I promise that every door I ask you to enter will still open if you choose to leave. He opened the box. Inside was his mother's ring, simple, old, and bright in the daylight. And if you say no, Lorenzo said, his voice quieter now, your name stays clean. Your apartment stays safe. Your daughter stays protected. My promise does not depend on your answer. Sofia broke, not because of the ring, not because of the roses, because for the first time in her life, safety was not being offered as a bargain. Lorenzo was not asking her to trade gratitude for love. He was giving her freedom before asking for forever. Lorenzo, she whispered. I'm still scared. Then be scared, he said gently. But do not let fear answer for you. Sofia looked at Lena. The little girl had been quiet, watching with shining eyes, trying to understand why grown-up happiness looked so much like crying. Then Lena stepped closer and took her mother's hand in both of hers. Her voice was small, sweet, and completely certain. Mama, please say yes. He makes you smile. Sofia looked at her daughter. There was no calculation in Lena's face. No thought of money, power, mansions, guards, or names. Just the pure, simple truth only a child would dare to say in a room full of history. He makes you smile. Sofia looked back at Lorenzo. She saw the feared man the city whispered about. She saw the mafia boss who could have buried her enemies before breakfast. But she also saw the man who had stayed silent when she asked, waited outside her door, washed his own cup badly, and learned that love was not the same thing as possession. Her lips trembled into a smile. Yes, she whispered. Lorenzo's eyes changed. The whole hall seemed to breathe. Sofia stepped closer. Yes, Lorenzo, I will marry you. Lena gasped, then shouted, She said yes! Rosa burst into tears. Marco turned away, but not before Lena pointed at him and said, I saw that. For the first time, Marco did not deny the smile. Lorenzo slid the ring onto Sofia's finger, then lifted her hand and pressed his lips to it. The kiss was not possession. It was a vow. Lena threw herself between them, wrapping one arm around her mother and one around Lorenzo as far as she could reach. For 1 second, Lorenzo froze, as if happiness had touched him without warning. Then his arms closed around both of them. The front hall that had once held fallen roses and a child's terror now held a family beginning in the same place fear had tried to win. 6 weeks later, the wedding began not at the chapel altar, but at the front doors of the Moretti mansion. That was Sofia's choice. She did not want to appear suddenly in silk at the end of an aisle as if the past had been erased. She wanted to walk through the place where everything had started, and let every step answer what had once tried to shame her. The doors opened to daylight. Sofia stood in a simple white dress, Lena beside her carrying the rings with the seriousness of a princess carrying a crown. The white roses that had once fallen uselessly from Lorenzo's hand now lined the hall in full bloom. Staff stood not hidden against walls, but openly among the guests. Rosa held a handkerchief to her mouth. Marco stood near Lorenzo, pretending this was only security and not the happiest duty he had ever accepted. Sofia looked at the marble floor and remembered water, fear, broken porcelain, Valentina's voice, Lena's cry. Then she lifted her head. Lorenzo waited at the center of the hall before they would continue to the chapel, not at the altar yet, not above her. There, in the place where he had first failed to see everything happening in his house, and where he had decided never to be blind again. When Sofia reached him, he held out his hand. She placed hers in it without shaking. Lorenzo looked at the guests, then at the staff, then at Sofia. You entered this house once as someone people looked through, he said, his voice carrying through the hall. Today, every door opens because you are here. Sofia's eyes filled, but she smiled. Lena leaned toward her and whispered, "Don't forget to smile, Mama." Sophia laughed, and the sound moved through the mansion like sunlight finally reaching a locked room. Then they walked together to the chapel. No hidden knives waited behind flowers. No stolen keys. No enemy in the old office. The chapel that Damien had tried to turn into a trap became the place where the promise was completed. Lorenzo did not promise Sophia a palace. He promised her a home where her no would be respected as deeply as her yes. Sophia did not promise to be fearless. She promised never again to make herself small for people who needed her silence. And when Lorenzo placed the ring on her finger before God, before his men, before the staff, before Rosa, before Marco, and before Lena, the old chapel stopped being the place where betrayal had waited. It became the place where truth became family. Months later, the mansion no longer felt like a museum of power, but Sophia had not changed it by accepting a title or sitting behind a manager's desk. She had changed it because Lorenzo had learned to ask different questions. Who waits in the servant hallway? Who is afraid to speak? Which door is only open for the powerful? Which children are being taught to disappear quietly? He changed those things because Sophia had once refused to live inside his protection, unless his protection became something better than control. Lena still kept her small apartment drawing in Lorenzo's study. The one with the tall man outside the door. Lorenzo had framed it, though Lena insisted the house was crooked and embarrassing. "It is accurate," Lorenzo told her. "The house?" she asked. "No," he said, the man waiting outside. Sometimes in the evening, Sophia found him looking at it. She would stand beside him without speaking. One night she asked, "Do you ever regret letting me leave?" Lorenzo looked at the drawing, then at her ring, then at the woman who had taught him that love could not be taken like territory. "Every day," he said. Sophia's face changed. He took her hand. "And every day I am grateful I did, because if I had kept you, I would have only protected you. By letting you choose, I learned how to love you." Outside, Lena shouted for them to come see the butterfly sitting on the fountain. Sophia smiled before she even answered. Lorenzo saw it, and in that smile he understood the full weight of the child's words in the front hall. He had made her smile, but she had done more than that for him. She had made his house honest. She had made his power answer to something better than fear. She had made his future real. Lorenzo Moretti had arrived home unannounced to surprise his fiancée, but what he saw changed everything. The woman in silk had carried betrayal behind her beauty. The maid on the floor had carried courage inside her silence. And the little girl who begged him to save her mother had not only saved Sophia that day, she had saved Lorenzo from giving his life to the wrong woman and led him toward the right one.